Hello and welcome. Today let us talk about the Volkswagen emissions scandal using the journal article. As researchers, as academicians, as students, and as practitioners, it's always a good idea to look at the latest articles that have been published about these companies involved in ethical lapses or ethical challenges and look at what recommendations have been provided. Chances are each of these journal articles will also have sources that are very credible that you can go to for additional information. This article entitled Volkswagen Emissions Scandal, a Global Case Study of Legal, Ethical, and Practical Consequences and Recommendations for Sustainable Management was published in the Global Journal of Research in Business and Management during 2016, right after the scandal was discovered. It was published in Volume 4 in issue number 2 of this journal. So this article is co-authored by Professor Frank Cavaco and myself. We again tried to do a thorough study of what had been written, what actions had been taken by Volkswagen and the government in general. So let us look at the abstract to see what information it provides for you, and if you're doing research about ethical issues related to emissions scandal, then maybe this article might be relevant. But the only way you can tell what is relevant or not and whether you should read the entire article is to look at the abstract first. That gives you a good idea of whether the rest of the article is related to your topic or not. With regards to the abstract, it says that in today's global workplace, all executives and corporations must ensure that their managers and employees make ethical and sustainable decisions for their own long-term interest, as well as those of the environment and consumers. Volkswagen has traditionally been known as a quality brand of automotive organization. But now they will also continue to be recognized as a global company that willfully and consciously manipulated their car software to falsify data. They will be known as a company that deceived the United States government and the public regarding compliance with emissions standards. However, they got caught and they will pay a heavy price in managing this crisis. This willful scandal makes one think if government deception was considered normal and acceptable in Volkswagen's corporate culture, in how such manipulation can be prevented in the future. In this article, we provide the facts about the Volkswagen emissions crisis along with a discussion of the harmful consequences resulting from the scandal. Based on the lessons learned, this article offers recommendations for managers and employees of all local and global corporations in making ethical, transparent, and sustainable decisions. Finally, a list of discussion questions are offered so managers and business students can reflect upon them for the creation of an organizational culture where effective and sustainable decisions become the norm. You can see the keywords here offered regarding this article and these keywords being discussed within the manuscript. You can see in the introduction paragraph, the authors have written that Volkswagen until recently always has been regarded as a hardworking, efficient, effective, as well as honest and trustworthy company that made excellent products for the consumer. Yet, in September of 2015, a scandal of major and dramatic proportions engulfed the German automaker based on the company fraudulently deceiving government regulators regarding compliance with pollution emission standards. How could so many laws be so blatantly violated? How could such a scandal happen? How could it have gone on for so long? Was deception considered acceptable in Volkswagen's corporate culture? How could a corporate culture devolve into one of tolerance for fraud, for deception, and for rule breaking? Were there not moral leaders at the top who stood their ground and objected to this? Were there not any whistleblowers anywhere inside the company? Did a corporate culture based on wrongdoing emanate from the top or from the bottom? Did the company take a narrow, short-term, perhaps jaundiced view of its own self-interest? Did the company abjure its moral responsibility to its stakeholders as well as to society and the environment as a whole? How could this happen? And what should be done about it? So this article attempts to provide some balanced perspective to the Volkswagen emissions crisis. And then the article tries to examine the legal, the ethical, and the practical consequences resulting from the scandal. And finally, the article offers some suggestions specifically to the Volkswagen company on how to address the ramifications of this scandal, and generally to the business managers on how to avoid such debilitating and harmful consequences. Finally, since this article is formulated as a case study, the authors have provided discussion questions at the end to stimulate analysis and discussion of the legal, ethical, socially responsible, and practical consequences of this scandal. So you can see now, based on reading the abstract in this comprehensive introductory paragraph, there's a lot of information that could be very useful, specifically if you're looking at emission scandals and unethical behaviors by these giant global companies that operate obviously in many, many nations. So this article gives you, again, a good background of what happened in case you're not familiar with the emission scandal from Volkswagen. It also talks about the legal consequences under this subheading. So there's a lot of information here about the American laws related to emission scandals, as well as the European law. So you can see here the U.S. Clean Act has specific regulations that companies must abide by. And then the article continues to talk about the ethical consequences of company managers' decisions and their policies regarding deception. So there's some good information here, along with some citations to further support what is written in this article. The practical consequences have its own subheading. And finally, there comes the recommendation section. As the authors have mentioned here, there's no simple and straightforward solution to this very, very bad emission scandal. Nonetheless, we would recommend that Volkswagen managers do some of the following or all of them. Number one, come clean, be fully transparent, accept responsibility as a company and not merely blame lower level employees. Apologize profusely, be humble, be systematic, and be empathetic, and provide sufficient redress to the injured parties. 2, set forth in cooperation with government regulators a credible plan to fix the affected vehicles, truly reduce emissions, and verify compliance with pollution standards. 3rd, offer buyback program wherein the company will buy back affected vehicles at a suitable price to get them out of circulation. This cost might actually be cheaper than the potential fines per vehicle, and this could help to rebuild customer trust and loyalty. 4, combine business profits with social responsibility and sustainability by making fuel-efficient, environmentally friendly cars. 5, make a substantial and long-term commitment to research and development in the areas of pollution emissions technology. 6, develop technology that will reduce emissions yet still produce enhanced performance. 7, advertise the company's commitment to an involvement in sustainability efforts, especially regarding climate change, and specify what the company's best practices will be to refurbish and enhance the company's environmental responsibility reputation in green image, particularly pertaining to reduction emissions while maintaining enhanced performance. 8, establish a corporate culture of adherence to the law, ethics and integrity, social responsibility, and sustainability. 9, establish stronger accountability structures, practices, and standards. 10, establish a positive work culture by means of a commitment of the top leadership to integrity, the promulgation of corporate governance policies, codes of ethics, codes of conduct, and communication thereof, as well as the relevant education and training of all employees. 11, communicate this new ethical value system and corporate culture to all its stakeholders as well as the communities and societies where the company does business. 12, institute structures, practices, and channels to ensure legal and ethical compliance in the disclosure of any wrongdoing as well as responsibility for redress and accountability for corporate actions. For example, in the form of ethics officers, ethics hotlines, ombudsmen, and other avenues and personnel for whistleblowing by employees. 13, strongly tell and communicate in writing to employees that they have a legal and moral duty to report any wrongdoing on the part of the company or coworkers. Assure employees that absolutely no reprisal will be taken for whistleblowing, and state that requests for anonymity during the reporting process will be respected to the fullest extent possible. 14, allow and encourage the employees to take a prudent amount of paid time off to work in the community on social and environmental projects. 15, ensure that the company itself is a green one, that is, engaged in environmental conservation and protection, and thus show that the company is reducing its carbon footprint. 16, as authors, we suggest that the U.S. Congress should also amend environmental laws to encompass criminal sanctions of companies and their personnel for intentional violation of environmental regulations. Overall, keep in mind that the aforementioned recommendations for Volkswagen are good for society as a whole, but they're also in the company's long-term self-interest. They will counter negative publicity and criticism. They will go a long way to reestablish trust and confidence. So these suggestions are designed to show that the company is doing everything possible to deal with the scandal and to do justice, to restore Volkswagen's reputation as a legal and ethical company, and to regain the confidence of government regulators, customers, and other stakeholders, and to create positive momentum toward achieving a reputation as a company of integrity. Like all other journal articles, you'll see a summary being offered and then some discussion questions for more research by you as students, by faculty members, and by researchers, and by consultants all over the world. And finally, you see some references here. So these references are actually additional sources for research related to emission scandals, and more specifically about this company. Okay, so that is a little bit more about the Volkswagen emission scandal, some of the challenges that they have faced and what they're doing about it, and what they need to do even more in the decades to come to restore the trust of their consumers in governments in the brand of the company. Good luck with your research. And remember that ethical behavior is a skill. So police evaluate and improve your ethical standards and your ethical muscles by thinking critically. Just because a company says they will do something does not mean that they actually do it. So what they promise and how they behave might be different. That's where your job comes in, to critically evaluate and assess what they promise versus how they behave in the communities where they operate. Good luck.